Hello, and welcome to California Gun Law. I'm your host, Don Hammond. Today I'm going to go over some California CCW license application tips based on my experience challenging CCW denials in court. I just won another Penal Code Section 26206 hearing this morning. We'll go over some lessons learned and ways that you can avoid having your application denied. I'm a licensed California attorney and a shooting instructor. I regularly help teach the 16-hour class that's required to get a concealed carry license in California. On this program, we provide education on California's complicated web of gun laws so the responsible gun owners like you can better understand how to lawfully exercise their rights. California has a complicated web of firearms laws and regulations, and there are lots of traps for the unwary. We want to help you do it right so that you won't need our criminal defense legal services. Today, I'll discuss California CCW license application tips. It's important to get this right so you can get your application granted without delay. As of this morning, I've completed 15 hearings to challenge CCW license denials throughout the state, and I've won 10 of them. I have about another 10 pending. So let's take a look at lessons from the trenches. First of all, yes, most people can get a CCW license in California now. There's no longer a good cause or moral character requirement. I have other videos where I go over the legal history and the recent changes in the law that allow most people to be eligible. The qualifications are in Penal Code Section 26150 and 26155, and the disqualifying factors are in Section 26202. If you are denied as disqualified, you can request a court hearing under Section 26206. Let's take a look at the application. The application is a Form BOF 4012. Many agencies use an online service, such as Permitium, to process their applications. I think it's a good idea to get a paper form and fill it out first before you go to the online application so that you're prepared for all of the questions in the online system. I'll put a link to the form in the show notes so that you can find it easily. You want to make sure that you fully complete the application without any omissions or inaccuracies. The application questions may be asking about things that happened a long time ago. You may not remember everything perfectly, but you need to include the information. Most things are not disqualifying, but you'll run into problems if you don't list them on the application. The questions include whether you've ever been charged with any criminal offense, civilian or military, in the United States or any other country, even if such charges were dismissed. Another question asks if you've ever been detained or arrested in the United States or any other country. If yes, please explain, including the date, agency, and whether the detention or arrest resulted in criminal charges, and if so, the disposition. That's a lot of information that they expect you to remember from your entire lifetime. I highly encourage you to go get your own live scan before you apply. You can request your own background check from the California Department of Justice. This is the same document that the police will get during the background check process. Having your own copy of it in advance will help you fill out the application completely without any omissions. You can request your own live scan at local mailbox stores or live scan service locations. Do a Google search for something like live scan near me, and then select a location. You'll fill out a form and run your fingerprints on a screen. Then, in about 7 to 10 days, you'll receive your own background report in the mail from the California DOJ. It will show any arrests, bookings, and convictions. If there are errors, you can use the included Report of Alleged Inaccuracy form to ask DOJ to correct their records. If you've lived outside of California, it's a good idea to also request your federal background. You can do that at the same time while you're getting that live scan done. Once you have your own live scan, you can accurately fill out the CCW license application, stating any arrests and convictions with accurate dates, arresting agency information, and other pertinent details. It's also a good idea to get your own DMV driver history printout. There's another question on the application about traffic tickets in the last 5 years. Don't get denied because you forgot about that cell phone ticket from 4 years ago. Get your DMV printout, fill out the application accurately. All of this is important because one of the most common reasons for denial is a failure to disclose information on the application. I've won several hearings where this is an issue, but this will get harder in the future. The judge who hears these cases in LA has caught on that the expedited hearing process in Section 26206 doesn't directly apply to a failure to disclose denial because it's not listed in Section 26202. Assembly Bill 1078, which is expected to pass the legislature any day now, will take effect January 1st, 2026, and will amend Penal Code Section 26195 to mandate that the agency shall not issue a license if the applicant knowingly provides inaccurate or incomplete information on the application. Until then, I still argue that nothing in current law authorizes a denial for anything like failure to disclose. But after January 1st, any failure to disclose denial will be directly supported by the statute, and we will have no recourse in court to overturn the denial. Other questions ask about civil lawsuits in the last 5 years. Again, get the case information and have it handy. Note that it asks if you have been a party to any civil lawsuit. It does not only ask if you've been sued, but also wants the information if you've sued someone else. Similarly, the application has questions about whether you have ever been involved in an incident involving firearms and if you have ever been involved in a domestic violence incident. Even if you were the victim of a firearms or domestic violence incident, you should list it. I had a client denied for marking no when the police later found out that he had called the police and had his ex-wife arrested because she pointed a gun at him. What a ridiculous reason for the police to deny an application. Another tricky question is related to restraining orders against you. Again, answer honestly and completely. One upcoming change with AB 1078 will be that temporary restraining orders issued without notice and an opportunity to be heard will no longer be disqualifying as long as the court did not issue a permanent restraining order. Otherwise, if the judge did issue the permanent restraining order, you are disqualified from applying for a CCW license for 5 years from when the restraining order expires. I have a few TRO denial cases that I've delayed to January to take advantage of the change in the law. This morning after my case, I saw a guy doing his own hearing without a lawyer who could have benefited from this change in the law. Unfortunately, it would not have been appropriate for me to butt into the middle of his hearing. Now he has to wait 2 years to reapply. There's a question toward the end of the application. Have you withheld any fact that might affect the decision to approve this license? If yes, please explain. I like to use this question to highlight good things, such as community involvement and extraordinary firearms training or experience. Try not to make any statements about why you want a CCW license. There is no good cause requirement, so you don't have to have a reason. I once had a client who decided to put in there that he wanted to protect his family, and he's not some vigilante. Problem is he left out the word not. So he said, I am some vigilante. The judge didn't appreciate that. So try to avoid putting in superfluous information. You'll have to list the guns that you intend to carry on the application. Some issuing agencies limit the number of guns they'll put on your license, but you can narrow that down later in the process. On the application, feel free to use up all of the spots. Of course, the guns must be lawfully registered to you, so those old things you have in the safe won't qualify. You're also required to list 3 references. One of the 3 must be a current or former spouse, cohabitant, fiance, dating relationship, etc., if applicable. And one must be your current cohabitant, if applicable. So come up with 3 people who will say nice things about you. If you live alone, you don't have to list a cohabitant. The law specifically says, if applicable. Now, these references won't necessarily know why the police are calling them. It's probably a good idea to give them a heads up in advance, but many background investigators won't even tell them why they're calling. They'll just ask general questions about you, maybe ask questions about your history with firearms, and they won't talk about the reason for the call. Some agencies will require a psychological evaluation as a part of the application process, and they'll make you pay for the privilege. Yes, they can legally do this, and it's much cheaper than you would pay for an independent evaluation from your own psychologist, but it's still a real pain to have to pay an extra $400 to $700 for your application. And it's often a CYA move by the issuing agency. Think of it as confirming that you're not dangerous rather than looking for reasons to deny you. Answer everything honestly during any written questionnaire and in the interview with the psychologist, but don't volunteer extra information. It's okay to be nervous, and it's okay to tell the psychologist that you're a bit nervous. That's normal. A failed psych exam is not a reason for denial under the statutes, but it can support the chief or sheriff's conclusion that the applicant is, quote, reasonably likely to be a danger to self, others, or the community at large, unquote, under Penal Code Section 26202A1. I've won several hearings where the denial is based on a supposedly failed psych exam, but I've also lost some. It all depends on the facts of the case. And in some cases, we get an independent psych exam that is much more thorough and concludes that the applicant is not reasonably likely to be a danger. I've had good success when I have an independent exam that is favorable. Of course, clients don't always take my advice on that. Let us know in the comments how your CCW license application process went. I'd like to gather more data from various issuing agencies across the state. And take a look at cagun.law, where you can stay up to date on legal developments and get cool merch, like this California gun law water bottle. I'm Don Hammond at California Gun Law, and we'll catch you all next time. Stay informed, stay legal, stay safe.